So, welcome on the podcast, Hilda. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, I'd like to introduce Hilda to everyone first. And first of all, Hilda, you founded PeopleBright, correct?
Correct.
And before that, you built an award-winning multi-million-dollar company with your husband. And over 13 years, you grew from 2 to 125 people. And along the way, you won a number of awards.
Yes. Yep.
Right, including 2 top 10 finishes in the best workplace in Canada, finalist nod as one of Canada's best managed companies, best small to medium-sized employers, and entrepreneur of the year with your local chamber of commerce. Is that correct?
Yep, it was fun.
It was fun, right?
There were professional awards too, but I'm in the people business, so I do the people business awards.
Okay. So right now, from what I gleaned on your website, PeopleBright Consulting helps business owners manage human resource activities, and you also help visionary companies create great workplace culture through practical and proven tools, knowledge, and structures.
Right.
So, tell me a little bit about your story. What led you to start your business today?
So PeopleBright then, or
PeopleBright. Let's talk about before. Your experience before.
So my husband decided that he wanted to start an engineering business. And when he did that, I wanted to provide that support to him. Little did I know that I would become immersed in his company. And I think what happened was we actually made a great team. He's an engineer, he's very visionary, and he makes things happen. And he probably could have managed this company on his own. But I have a managerial background. I started my career as a nurse, and I taught nursing for 5 years in hospitals. Then I became a director, a manager, a director, and even an IT application specialist, managing the project that brought our company, our hospital, into the computer age of actually being able to document and do computers online. So that was a really robust background for me to really transition to support our business. And it grew from 1 to, as you said, 125. I like to joke and I like to say, it became 2 people within 2 weeks because somebody had to pay him. So I started off doing payroll and we just kept growing from there. So essentially all the things that I had done before really brought me to the background of providing that support for my husband. And it was an amazing journey because 2 things. Number 1, we wanted engineers to really have a challenging career from day one. A lot of people graduate, and particularly in the engineering field at that time, people would be given an assignment, and 2 years later they would still be doing the same kind of work, but almost with their eyes shut. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was kind of boring and drone from their perspective. They weren't given that opportunity to grow. So my husband said, my company is going to be different. We are going to give people challenging work and allow them to grow and stretch along the way to an area that they might prefer. Can't always do that, but that's the thing. And then he said, and I want people to be happy. I want people to work together, and I want it to be a great place to work. And that's why we went for the best workplaces in Canada, because by that point in our company, we actually had grown into something we thought was really, really a great place to be. And we were recognized number 9 the first year we went through it, and number 4 the second year, because we made the changes that this very extensive report provided us. So fast forward, we sold the company, and I wondered what we would do. And I did some transitioning with the company, and then I thought, what do I want to do? And it was really the human resources part appeals to me. Being a nurse, the human resources side really appeals to me. So what I did was start to look for creating support for companies. And I started off with a smaller company called Developing People and Business Success, which was really not a company name. It was almost like a logo or a motto. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and then I worked for a company and tried to really help them become the kind of company my husband and I did. But it dawned on me that that's one company at a time. And so when my kids got a little bit older, I decided, I think I want to get back into the business. And what I did was then I launched PeopleBright, and that's about 3 years ago now. And the reason for PeopleBright is really recognizing if I can help business owners be the best possible business they can be, then I in turn help the employees, because then they get to work in a place that really is a great place to work. So I like to work with clients who really want to be a better workplace. You know, they envision a place that's happy, people are working together, and if people understand being happy at what you do makes it more productive, and in turn helps the business owner with the profits, because the more productive people are, the more happy they are with their clients. It's just a win-win situation. So that's what I like to do. I like to help companies build better businesses through work culture. I really, really believe in that a lot. So that's why I started People Bright Consulting several years ago now.
So let's backtrack a little bit though, back to the company with your husband. What was it called?
iTrans Consulting.
iTrans Consulting. At iTrans Consulting, what were some of the key lessons you learned along the way that, really informs what you're doing now at People Bright?
So it was very interesting. I always thought about things top down, right, and bottom up. And what my husband did was we created what I'll call the foundation. We had a mission, vision, and set of values that really wanted to make it a great place to work and make people feel valued where they work. So the lesson learned to me was about 3 years ago now, somebody called a reunion. 60 of our employees came to this reunion.
And you guys have 7 branches across the country.
Yeah. Well, these were all local people.
All right? Local people, all right.
But 60 people showed up, and somebody, wasn't us that organized it, one of our former staff. And she just sent an email out. 60 people showed up. And it was funny because I was actually transitioning to my business at the time, and they laughed at me and they said, Hilda, don't you know that working for iTrans was a special place, and when you go to work for another company, it's not the same? And we've all been through that, we've all talked about it, and I thought, wow,
it's all 60 of them pretty much resonated the same message.
Yeah, and the epiphany came that night when somebody said to me, people said things that suddenly I realized we built the company, but the staff helped to make it stronger. And how they made it stronger was they bought into the mission, vision, and values. They bought into what we believed in. So not only were we trying to make sure it happened, they in turn. And what I mean by that was that they instilled the values of our company. They were the ambassadors of our company. They went out and shared about how proud they were to work at iTrans. They embraced people and brought them in, made them feel part of our work culture so that everybody took pride. And interestingly enough, we talk about mission, vision, and values. And whenever I teach companies, I say it starts with the foundation. You have to have a mission, vision, and values, because from that mission, vision, and values comes the people that you hire, the business operations that you have, the types of clients you hire, all stem from this foundation. And at iTrans we had insight, integrity, and innovation. And those were our 3 I's. That was our values. And our staff knew them. So it's almost like a textbook when you say, oh yeah, you should have these mission, vision, and values, everybody should know them. And people would say, I know, just like our mission, vision, and values. I said, yeah. No, like our mission, vision, and values. And what they meant was, I know what they are. And the person proceeded to tell me insight, integrity, and innovation. So that was one lesson learned. I think the other lesson learned was your work culture. It evolves, and you need to evolve with it. When we were 10 people, everybody knew everybody. It was like family. So that on a Friday night, you could say, hey, we're going to go do this, catch a movie. And on Monday, everybody would say, hey, I caught the movie, or no, I had this wonderful time. When you get to 25, it evolves. And we found that people expected to come into a company that was well-formed, that had policies and procedures and processes similar to a larger company. And when we were 125. So the big kind of surprise for us was that when we were 10, we were like family. But when we were 25, a lot of young people we were hiring say, you're not my family, I have family. So you go, okay. So we started to use the word team, and all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, 75, 85, that that philosophy that we had, the ambassadors, the type of people we hired, now they started to call family. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. So that was another lesson learned. I think there were hiccups along the way, but these are two poignant things that helped me realize that we were on the right track. When you believe in something and you foster that, you hire the right people, you can create it. A lot of bigger companies might say, what's with this culture stuff? Culture is really something that can change. And I've actually created something called Rev Up, and we can talk about it later, but Rev Up to me is founded on the basis of what my husband and I created when we had iTrans Consulting.
Now, I'm curious, because one thing is, all companies out there have mission, vision, and values. I mean, like, it's a given.
Yep.
What made your company different from others? Because, like, literally all the companies have a mission statement and vision statement, right? Now it's getting phased out. People are using stories to replace it instead. But I mean, if mission and vision and values is the key ingredient, then everyone would be having it. So what was different?
Okay, so I come from corporate world for the better part of my early life. Well, for the part of my early life. And I sat in on a lot of mission, vision, and values, and frankly,
you go to these retreats where everyone just sits down and they hash out a mission statement kind of thing, right?
Yes, and then you get this mission statement that is like 5 sentences long. Who remembers?
No one remembers.
No. So a lot of it had been exercises to do. And just maybe you stick it on the wall, but you can't read it. So what we tried to do is create very simple things. Like for example, I use Disney when I teach, because Disney was our cottage every 12 to 18 months. They are a great example of how to run a business. And I think if you keep it short enough, a mission and vision statement shouldn't be, like reams and reams. It should be succinct. And Disney's is to make people happy. Now, can you not remember that? Everybody in your company will be able to remember that. So we kept ours short as well. And what I use when I talk about Disney is when you have that foundation and you build on it, it's easy to hire the right people. If you're in a quality insurance company, your thing might be to provide, 100% perfection type thing. Well, don't you think from that basis that the operations will have checks and balances to ensure quality? Disney would have checks and balances to ensure service and happiness of clients. So that's what I mean by when you have a mission, vision, and value, it guides you to see where you want to go. But don't make it so long that it's going to be forgotten by people. Keep it short and simple and create it the foundation. And the same with human resources. If I have that foundation, that guides the types of people I hire. People are going to be hired at Disney that are quality driven for service. They want to make people happy. They buy into that mission. Whereas for other companies, quality is key. So you're going to want those data detailed oriented people. And the types of clients you hire will want that. So that's why it can be just for the sake of doing it. And when it's that way, yes, it's not. But don't kid yourself. If you let things go laissez-faire, if you don't, as a business owner, have that foundation simplified, then you're not going to know what is going to happen. I have a group that I chair, 2 different groups. Now I'm transitioning from one to another. But I've been chairing groups and facilitating entrepreneurs. And what I find is those entrepreneurs that come in every month and they say, oh, I'm starting this now. Oh, I'm adding this product line. It's because they never had a mission, vision, and values. They didn't know what they wanted. And so every month they've got new business lines going and growing. If they could just get back to what is my core business and do I believe in that? If you can have a message and you believe in it and follow it, that will guide you to hire the right people, to have the right operations, the right clients, and the right products and services.
Right, right. I mean, that's a great point, because that's one of the things that, like I said, like a lot of mission statements are way too long, and I come from an education background, and one of the things that we talk about is, backward design, right? You design everything backwards.
Yeah.
You have your mission, like you said, vision, values,
Yeah.
vision, and then you build everything around that, and you focus on that goal, right? So what's one of the common mistakes then? Like you said, entrepreneurs are kind of all over the place nowadays. I mean, is that the one mistake that's setting them up for failure, or is there something else, you think? Because I've worked with some entrepreneurs before, and they're great at what they do. They're kind of like a specialist at what they do, but they're not great at dealing with people necessarily, or managing teams or so on. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think having a mission, vision, and values, and again, keep it simple, is one thing. I think the other thing is entrepreneurs need to recognize their strengths and then have people who complement those strengths for the others aspects, because running a business is not just about selling goods and services. You have to have a strong foundation from the admin side, the managerial side, the bookkeeping, finance side, and the human resources. And one of the things I found really interesting is that I think the people skills is the part that's lacking. And I think that people who want to use my services really understand the value of people. One of the things I decided to do in the spring was to actually launch a course on people management. What I find is that most people are promoted to be a manager, and entrepreneurs are self-promoted managers because they're good at their skill, whatever that skill is. They're good at managing projects. And then ergo, let's promote this person to a manager. Let's start our own business. The one thing they're not good is the people side. And it's funny, when I did my session, one of the attendees said, "Hi, my name is George, and I have been a manager for 22 years, and this is the first time I've ever gone to something that will teach me about people management." And that's surprising, because one should always try to improve your people skills, because when you find that you relate to people and you connect with them, that's when they'll start to want to do more. That's when you understand who they really are and really help them. And in my training, I shared with them this concept I created called Rev Up. Do you want me to share a little bit about Rev Up now? So Rev Up actually is an articulation of what created the success of iTrans. I didn't call it Rev Up back then, but it was the essence of what we did when we were iTrans. And Rev Up is an acronym that's easy to follow. My People Bright mission is to rev up potential. Simple. My staff will know how to say that because it's just 2 words and incorporates this Rev Up. Rev Up stands for respect, equality, valued, as in I value you, uniqueness, and potential. So imagine what would happen in an organization if your staff embraced Rev Up, if your managers and your company embraced Rev Up. Imagine if we could treat people with respect and equality, value them, look at their uniqueness, and tap into that potential. Imagine what that would do for the individual. They'll feel challenged in their workplace and respected. And imagine what that would do for a manager, creating a relationship like that.
You mentioned people skills earlier, because, I mean, Rev Up is all about equipping people with people skills, right? When we say people skills, I mean, what does that mean? What do you mean by people skills? What are the essential people skills that, separates the great from the good?
So that's a great question. People skills is really communicating and communicating effectively. So it's not just what people say, but it's how they say it, and the tone and the body gesturing. But it's also for people to listen and to validate. So when you spend time talking to people, you do connect with them. And connecting with them is also learning a little bit about them. Because if you learn a little bit about who they are, there's a connection. And when I do my training, we did an exercise called the iceberg exercise. What you see above is not near as much as what's below. And when people started to talk a little bit about below, one of our participants said, Hilda, that's when the group made a difference to me. Before that, it was kind of fun. We had a building block exercise for communication, and she said, that's when I started to feel connection. So I said, imagine if you were a manager and you just learned that much about your employee, how you would start to feel that connection, and then looking at uniqueness and potential. So the other part of communication is, how do you ensure that you're listening? How do you ensure that you're validating? So oftentimes people will say something, and what you're doing is you're thinking about the next thing you want to say. So you're not even listening to that conversation. You're actually thinking of your next answer, and that's not listening. And validating, when somebody feels bad, what do you say? One of the things I also do is difficult conversations. A lot of times people don't know what to talk about when it's a difficult conversation.
Can you give me an example?
One could be when somebody tells you that they have a loved one that's hospitalized or who's got cancer and now will need lots of chemo and support. And oftentimes people don't know what to say.
Right.
And so they just say, well, I had an aunt and she got through this. Well, what's that saying to me? It's saying, like, you didn't hear my pain. You're just saying it'll be fine, but you don't even hear me. So teaching people how to say the right things. When a person is asking for something, and it might be the fact that they're checking in on their overtime and they don't understand. Well, a manager may not understand what the rules are. So they think they're going to say something and they say, you're not allowed overtime. Meanwhile, they really need to check back, or they need to check on company policy. So learning for people to be able to say, I'm not sure what the answer to this question is. I have to do some follow-up. I want to make sure I give you the right answer. Then go back. So people don't often feel that they can say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I teach them how to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I teach them how to be empathetic. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that if people come and they talk about harassment, today there is legislation that says you cannot bully people, you cannot harass people. And there are stiff fines if people don't follow those. So I teach people what to say and how to say it. Too often what happens is people will say something and say, oh, well, it's in your imagination, or go talk to that person. Mm. That is not the right response. So I teach people various scenarios, as I've shared, on what do you say when a person comes with a difficult conversation. Mm-hmm. And
so I want to go back to that, the difficult conversation about, for example, someone's hospitalized and they're going under chemo. What should a manager say in this kind of situation?
So a manager should say, thanks for sharing that with me. I'm sorry for what you're going through. What is it that we might be able to do? And then listen. And then whatever that person says, he said, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me think about this. Let me talk to some people and let's see what we can do. Keep me informed of what's happening, because it may be suddenly something that's fresh and new and they don't know if, can I take some time off for chemo, taking my aunt or my mom to the chemo things. So you keep the dialogue open, you show the empathy, you don't have all the answers, but you show accommodation, because you are expected to accommodate people. Mm-hmm. So those are the kinds of things that keep the lines of communication open.
You mentioned earlier that when, so one hot topic nowadays about harassment is clearly MeToo.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How would you deal with a topic like that? Because, rule of law says innocent until proven guilty, but going through that legal process is going to take forever, and oftentimes these things are left pretty much it's a lot of it's hearsay, right? He says, she says kind of thing. How would you deal with a problem like that if you were brought in to consult?
So the thing is that there is legislation. Every company should have a policy on what to do. And managers need to be trained to be sensitive, to follow up on things. So initially what would happen was if a person comes forward, you would listen to what they're saying. You would say, thank you very much for sharing this. We will be, following up on it. And then using the policy that your company set, state what will happen. And just a brief highlight then is that you're required to investigate confidentially within the confines of how confidentially you can keep it. And you are expected to report back to the person who made the complaint in a high level. This was the outcome. Meanwhile, as manager, you would just say, I will be we will, as a company, be investigating. If you don't know all the answers, I will have to refresh myself on what the protocol and procedure is, but we do have it, and it's there. Point them to where it is in their company's policy and procedure manual, and then do that investigation. One of the things that people want to know whenever you're communicating is that they've been heard, and it's that validation. You don't have to. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Mm-hmm. Empathy is that you have heard them and that you want to help. So sympathy is just saying, I had an aunt or who was harassed, and the case was this. Again, that's not empathy. Empathy is saying, I hear what you're saying, let's get to the bottom of this, let's find out. So in the exploration phase, though, you might say, have you spoken to the other person? Because oftentimes what we're finding is that when people make a complaint or a concern, they have not gone to the other person to clear the air. Because sometimes it could be just, that person said this offhanded remark at the lunchroom, and I took offense to it because I'm of the same ethnicity that they were making fun of. Because that can be a form of, did that person go to that person and say, hey, that joke was a little bit off, and I felt a little uncomfortable about that. That's the first step people should try to do, and you should try to empower people to go back to the source. Now, sometimes it can be uncomfortable. That person may be shy, or that person might said, I've tried that and it doesn't work. Or that person really yells at me and I'm too shaky to talk. Then you may go back and talk to that person as a facilitator. When it's really bad, when maybe there's like sexual harassment involved or yelling and hitting, then that gets escalated, and that's really an investigation. Mm-hmm. Some companies will use third-party investigators to come in and do that. Some people will do their internal. Impartiality has to be the name, the way it goes. When it is a senior level person or the head of HR, this cannot be impartial. Mm-hmm. So the law dictates that those ones need to have external.
Right. Impartiality is so important, especially nowadays, especially for the Millennial and Gen Z generation that's coming up. I mean, Millennials have been working for a while now, but Gen Zs are really entering the workforce, and their values seem to be quite different, at least from the studies that have taken place about this demographic, right? And so I'm just curious then, if Millennials and Gen Zs are entering the workforce, what are some things that they should be? I mean, it's kind of two-sided, right? On one end, what should Millennials and Gen Zs do to prepare themselves for the workforce? And for the workforce, what should companies be doing to help these people along, and so that they feel a sense of belonging, feel like they're part of a family or a team?
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I think people need to learn about people. Now, within the Millennial and Gen Z workforce, everybody's individual. So to stereotype is again stereotyping, but at least stereotyping gives you a sense of where to start. But again, what I talk about in RevUp is look for the uniqueness and tap into that potential. So don't paint everybody with the same brush. But Absolutely. The trends, I believe, are that the Millennials and Gen Z really want to make it a social impact. And so companies should not just embrace the buzzword of social impact. They really need to think about what are those things that they value as a company, and to declare what that is and share that. Because I think for Millennials and Gen Z, they want to work in a place that is meaningful. And my belief is, regardless of what age you are, is that you look for a workplace that will make it meaningful to you, that you will be happy in. So just like we did at iTrans, we created work that was challenging for people. So one of the things that young adults should look for is a place that feeds into their passion. It may be hard for you to find your passion, but some people know what their passion is. And even though you know some people aspire to being a hockey player, in the National League, everybody can't be that. But what if you could work in a company that worked with hockey, or if you love the culture and the arts, why not do whatever you are working at, whether you're an accountant or you're a marketing person, work in that background, work for the arts and entertainment field, work for a sports related company in whatever field, but look for those places that embrace that passion that you have. So that would be one piece of advice. And some of the ways you can find those companies, if you go and Google and look for the best workplaces in Canada, the best employers in Canada, the best socially responsible companies in Canada, or if you have a passion for eco, look for eco-minded companies. So find your niche, find your background, and then look for jobs that way. I find
What's eco? Eco-minded?
Eco-friendly.
Oh, eco-friendly. Okay. Okay.
Ecology.
I was thinking ECHO.
Yes.
Yep.
What is that acronym? Yes. No. Eco-friendly.
Okay.
Ecological. Yeah. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I was thinking eco, but yes.
Yes. So finding that passion and working in it. I think the other thing that they should do is when you're in an interview, ask about the company, because it's all about fit. I tell people hire for fit. That means you as an individual as well as the company. Because when the fit isn't there, it's going to be hard to work. One question you might ask is, what kind of onboarding or orientation do you provide for people? Because those companies that provide a good onboarding are the ones that are going to retain their staff. It's very interesting. The statistic is that people often know within 1 week whether this is going to be a good fit or not. And it's how they're felt. It's how they're made to feel. Are they welcomed in this company? Are they, when they first start, does somebody kind of sit down and tell them what to do, or do they just park them at a spot and give them a manual and expect them to go figure it out? Those companies that understand that for you to fit in, if I spend 3 or 4 days with you, that 3 or 4 days spent is going to increase your productivity much faster than I give you a manual and tell you to go figure it out, right? Or to go figure out how to get along with the rest of the people in the crowd. So one of the questions you might ask in the interview for fit is, just tell me about how people get immersed into the company quickly, or on what's your orientation program like, and how do people fit in quicker so I can be more productive? How do I fit in quickly so I can be productive? As when you find the right spot, one of the things you can do is really show that you are doing a great job. Keep your lines of communication open.
How do you do that?
So when a person gives you an assignment, then follow up. Let them know, I'm done this, or I'm having a little bit of a decision point. I'm not sure whether I should do it this way or that way. I think we all want to do a good job. And when we don't, we feel really bad about that. I don't think there are many people out there who just want a paycheck and get away with as much. So when the manager has that premise and you have that premise, and create a working relationship, that's good. One of the things you might do is start by saying, hey, I want to make sure I do a good job, and I want to know what that means to you. So tell me what you expect. So some managers want to know everything. You don't want to work for a micromanager, so you might want to check that on your thing. But when people want to know what's happening, and they want to know when something's going a little sour. So as a person, you might send an email just to let you know I'm progressing. I do anticipate to have this done by Friday. When you don't know, say, I have a question for you. In order for me to continue, I'm not sure if I should do it A or B. And that could be a face-to-face, that can be an email. There may be 10 ways to do something. And if I'm picking this way to do it, but my manager is thinking I want it done that way, well, how happy is that person going to be? If I pick one way that he's thinking it's this way, then we're closer to the mark. So all I'm saying is there are many ways to do things. We have a picture that one of our engineering directors had on the wall. Build me a tree house, right? Or build me a swing. And so one person's image of it is a rope with a piece of wood on a tree. Other one has a tree house with a swing set and a slide going down. Well, we're still building the swing. But one has this vision of detail and beauty, and the other one is very simplistic. So communicating the goal is important. And a good manager would always kind of tell people what the final picture is, so we can all work towards it. So if you don't know what that final picture is, try to get a sense of that. So it's important that you ask those right questions, you keep it clear.
What's the one way for people to build these people skills, and like for young people, because that's so important. Like everything's about communication, keeping people in the loop.
So to me, the people that were the brightest were the ones that would come and share and talk. And as a good manager, they should bring that in. But if you've got a manager who doesn't do that, then start to set up a relationship. Just say, I want to do a good job. Can we go for a quick coffee, or can I take 15 minutes of time? So sell yourself. Say, this is what I'm capable of doing. I want to deliver. I want to be effective. Now, I teach older people, older manager types, that millennials expect 7 touches a week.
What does that mean?
7 touches could be, hi, how are you? It could be, great job you did on that. Or it could be a sit down. So it's not always intensive.
Right.
But that's the expectation of Millennials and Gen Zs. And when I tell managers that, they go like, what? And I said, it doesn't have to be labor intensive. A lot of the performance evaluations now aren't the annuals anymore. They're the feedback. So I created a evaluation tool that allows people to put feedback in, and it can be as simple as, how's it going, or teaching them something. But it's that touch point. It's making some contact.
And so you're suggesting that millennials and Gen Zs should initiate some of these touch points, right? Rather than wait passively and wait for someone to serve you. You got to do it yourself sometimes.
So yes, they should do that, but again, don't make it 7 times a week.
Right.
But start by creating a relationship, and then having it occasionally. But yes, don't wait for your boss to do that. Just say, hey, is it time to talk again? And sometimes it can be just casual. You're talking about something, and you say, hey, I noticed that there's this big assignment on that. I'd like to learn that one day. We had a co-op student who did 2 co-ops with us, and she did a really great job. She told us what she wanted. When she graduated, she joined our company, and we had a chat. And she shared with me that she wanted to make project manager in 5 years. Now, for an engineer, that's a lot, because the first 3 years you're just learning. And we kept giving her opportunities along the way, because we kept those touch points. We kept continually talking about her, giving her opportunities, assessing that. That's the relationship building I'm talking about. And at the close to the 5th year, we said, okay, your anniversary's coming up, and if you ask us if you're ready for project manager, we say yes. And she said, what was I thinking? In her youth, she thought she could do it. And then as she gained more experience, she realized being a manager is a lot more than just having the technical skills and managing the project. It's learning complexity, it's learning to deal with the public, and it's learning to talk and deal with people. So we had she was saying she felt she wasn't ready, and I sort of said, it's not an evolution. You know, we will help you evolve. It's not a revolution. We will help you evolve to that role. Think about it. And I said, these are the reasons why you can be the project manager now. And this is what we will do to help support. I don't care when you decide when it is, but when you're ready, we will open that door for you. So she took the weekend to think about it, and she says, I'm ready. And I said, okay, you're not alone. We will guide you. We will support you. And she went on to become senior manager.
So it's interesting because one of the major critiques that I hear from companies nowadays is that millennials and Gen Zs, they hop around. They can't sit still. They can't commit. They can't grind it out. But on the other hand, you know, it also depends on the company's side whether they're able, like you said, the onboarding or the opportunities to progress in the way that they want, right? And the systems that you have to support that. I mean, so it sounds like it's almost, I mean, from your experience at least, it's kind of a two-sided thing. It's not just the millennials, you know, not being able to sit still. It's also the companies don't have the structures really in place to support that.
Yeah, I think we all want change. I was always good for 3 years, and if I didn't get a new challenge, that would be weird. So I found myself in my last working job 10 years, and I thought about that. Wow, God, that was a friggin' long time. Sorry.
No problem.
And what I realized was during that period of time, I kept evolving. I kept changing. You know, I was a director of one area, then I expanded to that, then I did computerization, and so there were always challenges for me. So being in the same organization doesn't necessarily mean doing the same static thing. When I look at some of the people that we've had over the years, they evolve and they move on to different things. It was very interesting. We travel a bit, and Chris Hadfield, I was reading an article about Chris Hadfield, so the astronaut, and the question they said, so what's it like to be a retired astronaut? To which he said, I'd like to think that everything that I have done before have brought me to where I am today. So it's an experience, it's a life experience, and I so resonated with that. I mean, here is a nurse who started off in nursing in an intensive care unit and then now finds herself an entrepreneur on my own this time, building a successful business of a passion that I love. And I like to think that everything that I learned, my nursing background has helped me to do things. My working in the engineering field, creating that best workplace, has again helped me to articulate now this rev up concept, which I feel will help people, will help managers be better managers, help individuals strive for things. What is my uniqueness? How do I tap into my potential? And how do I help other people recognize what my uniqueness is? Now, that's not to say that I only do unique stuff, but understand who you are. Learn from where you are and do whatever you're doing to the best of your ability. You may find yourself in a job that you think, oh, geez, why am I doing this? Turn it around and say, what value will I get by doing this experience? And then maximize and get what you can from that. Because everything that I learned when I was in an engineering business with my husband really helped me to grow. I mean, I did basically the back office. I learned about real estate. I learned about the U.S. I learned about the legal. I mean, I went through so many contracts. I just, people think I'm a paralegal. By the way, I can critique a legal document. So whatever you're doing, look for what that's giving you, what experience and exposure. But do self-discovery. Find out what you're interested in. I have a tool that I like. People use DISC and Myers-Briggs, but this one called Fascination Advantage. It's amazing. It really resonates with me. It helps people figure out who they are. I'm currently working with a company where the manager actually hired me to help young people, and these are actually Gen Zs and Gen Zs. They're moving into director roles very early because her business is booming. She's a startup, and now, so she wants them to learn all kinds of leadership skills. So I'm teaching them about communication, motivation, leadership. And she's giving them coaching time. So they get 8 sessions with me coaching. And I said, I would like to do this Fascinated Advantage because it will help them understand who they are. At the end of this thing, they get 16-page report that says their strengths. There are 7 languages. I'll just do this briefly. That when you speak the language that you're normally comfortable in, you speak with confidence. And those 7 languages include innovation, so creativity, the power of passion, working with people, the power of details, very detailed people, the power of creating trust amongst the group. So there are 7 of those languages. You get to be told through this report, these are my strengths. I'm a passionate person who's very detail focused. And that helps you say, oh, this is what I'm good at. And when I do it, it just comes so easily. So that will help people say, this is the kind of career I should do. What do I love to do? I love to work in the arts field. So then I'll look for a job that uses my languages in a place where I love to be. And what a powerful solution that is. So working with these young Gen Zs and millennials, I'm helping them find out very early in their 20s what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Most of us never get that opportunity to figure out who we are until like we're 30 or 40. So they got a jump start on figuring out who they want and to help their careers soar.
So we're wrapping up here. Where can people learn more about you and what's coming up with People Bright?
So I have a website, People Bright, as well as a face page, and I'm on Instagram. I hired a young 20s HR coordinator, and she just loves social media, so you'll see me out there more. We are doing for managers and future managers this, what I'm calling Rev Up Yourself, Rev Up Your Team, and I kind of highlighted that. But Jenny, who's my HR coordinator, she's excited about the Rev Up concept. She's already done her Fascinated Advantage tool, and we've talked about her career. And she says, I'd like to do Rev Up for younger adults. And I said, that's a great idea. So watch out, visit my website, look for it, join our email list if you'd like. We're going to actually have a training, career coaching. So Rev Up Your Career, I think we're going to call it, in February. So we'll be able to help people who really want to know more about it. But do visit my website and ask questions, contact me. We'd be happy to talk to you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming up on this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Jonathan. Great.